Which season's first boot was most screwed over? Was straight up robbed. I couldn't even imagine getting to compete like that and getting eliminated first. The advantage truly was founded and played day 2 by a lunatic, a 70-year-old woman. Rogues, I have listened to you all, and clearly you wanted a video discussing the most screwed over first boots in Survivor. While it's debatable whether these individuals could have gone on to win because of an advantage or other production influence, they were wrongly first eliminated from the game. So as much as it may sadden many of you, Zayn won't appear in this video. He literally told his entire tribe to vote for him. Instead, we'll be focusing on 5 individuals who could have gone further if not for a production twist. Jeff Probes, don't at me on Twitter, bro. I probably won't read it anyway. Stephenie Gonzalez featured on Season 36 Ghost Island. This was a distant island, rather random in its presentation, where sometimes a contestant could send themselves or pick others to go. In pre-swap Navidi vs Malolo, this was the case, with the Navidi tribe being able to pick after winning the first immunity challenge who went to Ghost Island, thus being exempt from tribal council. This then segues into the Malolo tribe dynamics, with pretty much everyone getting along well. Enter Jacob Derwin, the man that literally told his tribe he was looking for the idol, wasted half the tribe's rice looking for said idol, and was borderline delusional in stating Malolo was the best tribe in Survivor history. You know, after losing the first immunity challenge literally minutes ago, if you were to imagine a stereotypical first boot in Survivor, that would pretty much be Jacob. So obviously, the fact was, the Navidi tribe sent him to Ghost Island. This then forced the Malolos to pick off a more integral member to their tribe. With Jacob gone, Gonzalez felt the need to play harder, playing into the keep the tribe strong mentality by targeting Donathan. While the right move in hindsight, considering Malolo is renowned as one of the worst performing tribes across iterations, the tribe saved Donathan and instead booted Gonzalez. Had she been playing on pretty much any other season without the Ghost Island twist, Jacob gets booted first, and with it being reaffirmed the tribes need physical strength, Gonzalez has a better pitch to stay at the second tribal council. Then, hey, if she survives that, she scrapes through to the swap. On the topic of scrapes, at 4th we have David vs Goliath, where after Pat was medevaced, Jessica was booted first from the David tribe. And yes, I'm counting her as the first boot of the tribe for this video, rather than Pat because he didn't even attend tribal council. Reports after the show have varied almost exactly 50-50 on who would have been eliminated in an alternate universe where Pat was not medevaced. Either it was Pat who isolated himself from the rest of the tribe, bar none, due to his comments, or Nick who kept himself very withdrawn from the rest of the group and was seen as untrustworthy. So ironically, the winner could have been the first boot. Now if Pat is booted first, unless the votes are split in a chaotic way, Jessica still may be our second boot. However, if Nick's booted at the first tribal, Jessica likely makes it to the swap, as Elizabeth will find it harder to get the numbers, and Pat's strength could help the Davids have a better shot at winning immunity challenges, particularly in episode 2. But at this point we're arguing over if she's the second boot or not. This still doesn't change the fact Nick and Pat would have almost certainly been booted in a timeline where Pat is unfortunately slammed back first into the boat by a massive wave and subsequently carried out on a stretcher. This seemed to be the death blow to Jessica, being the first boot all oolong. And on the topic of oolong, at number 3 we have Palau's first boot, Jolanda. Now, Jolanda, quite frankly, was hung, drawn and quartered in Palau, with this torture existing in multiple forms through the game. First is the Palau schoolyard pick, which I've gone on record to say on the channel before is the worst twist in Survivor history, with Wanda and Jonathan literally being booted off the show because they were the last picks. Rather than, you know, just making it 2 tribes of 10. Whether you consider it unlucky Jonathan wasn't automatically placed onto the Oolong tribe as the 10th and final individual, or consider it unlucky Ibrahim didn't instead pick Wanda over Angie, it would have helped Jolanda. Everyone was fed up with Wanda singing, on top of her being one of the physically weakest contestants ever on the show, and Jonathan had a massive target due to Kobe throwing out his name pre-swap. Nonetheless, Jolanda would have had a shield that was far more appealing as the first boot than her on Oolong. It's also weird that the immunity necklace doesn't... Immunity? Sure, it protects him from the schoolyard pick, but its function is to protect a person at tribal council. It's no surprise some people feel this individual immunity should have worked like basically every other necklace, allowing Jolanda and Ian further immunity at the first tribal they attended. Survivor South Africa did this in Immunity Island, and it was only on its 8th season. Jolanda's physical strength would have been very much useful for the struggling Oolong tribe, which contrasts the next individual who, in spite of their personal struggles, had tribes that dominated. Emphasis on tribes because keeping with the plurality theme, and number 2, we have Francesca. Sorry, my mouth is dry and I've been getting treatment for it. Now, you may be wondering which of Francesca's games we'll be covering, as she is the Sandra Diaz Twine of the first boots, being eliminated first in both Redemption Island and Karamoan. And to that I say, we're talking about both. The Survivor legend debuted in Redemption Island, being the only one on her tribe to actually take Rob seriously as a threat, and not follow him into oblivion, which obviously caused an innate disconnection between her, Rob, and the rest of the tribe. That being said, Rob actually wanted to target Christina after the immunity challenge due to her looking through the sewing kit and correctly assessing she had the idol. But because of an idol threat, and likely because he wanted to cure his PTSD from 2 seasons ago, Rob enacted a split vote plan he hoped would actually work this time, with the guys voting Francesca and the girls voting Christina. This countered the minority of Philip, Christina and Francesca with their 3 votes. Except, at tribal council, Philip begins getting into an argument with his only 2 allies and throws a rogue vote onto Francesca, probably to spare her an extra 3 days of him butchering her name. Christina was the main target due to idol paranoia, and with Philip's rogue vote, it ruined what was supposed to be a 3-3-3 vote split, where the majority then eliminated Christina on the revote. 4 seasons later, Francesca returned in probably one of the most questionable casting decisions across all of TV media, somehow as a favourite on a fans versus favourite season. But once again, Francesca was insanely screwed. Oh, not just by being the first boot again, but the fact she had to play with Mr. Shepherd. Again. On Karamoan, despite Andrea being initially targeted due to being looked as untrustworthy, Francesca's name was subsequently thrown out and she was voted out. In exit interviews, Francesca identified she was harmed by the cast knowing of her as a prior first boot, and the information they knew about her was isolated in that one episode. And I don't disagree. I feel it was a lot easier for the majority of the tribe to vote her out first, as she was already a prior first boot. And I know what you're thinking, the past 4 boots have been ridiculously screwed, no doubt. How is the final individual going to be able to compete with these ladies? Was half the tribe made magically immune at tribal council or something? Yeah, we're talking about Australian Survivor. For those that don't know, Phil featured on Brains vs Brawn, and surprisingly, for being the first eventual boot, was well situated on the tribe. They were well liked, had very close bonds to the likes of Way, and honestly seemed rather strategic. So how did they end up as the first boot? Well, to put it simply, George. If you don't know who George is, let me give you an analogy. Imagine a scenic environment. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming, then you light a match, burn said forest into an inferno, and set off 100 rockets. That's George. During the first episode, George found one of the most overpowered advantages in Survivor history, which operated like the safety without power, except it can be played on 6 people. Without this advantage, George was the obvious first boot. So obvious in fact, one of the people he played it on was himself. but Phil was in luck. See, I brought up way earlier, and she was the tribe's next target due to being physically weak, but she was made immune by George as well. In fact, for some reason, George had the ideology that all the older individuals needed to be saved because of their life experience, taking away other physically weaker potential voting options. At best, Phil lost the 2 biggest shields in front of him at this tribal, which was insane. Without this one-time broken twist, Phil survives likely to the merge, with Way as a target, Joey's itch to get out Mitch, Haley's want to flip the game, and Braun being so fractured. So overall, I feel it goes without saying they are extremely deserving of number 1 on this list. On the topic of extremely deserving, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you are notified of all my future uploads. And here's a video where I talk about 5 fan-made Survivor twists that you should check out since it contains some really cool features from Discord survivors. Nonetheless, have a great day, and peace!